Good evening. When we receive a lesson such as we received last night, we are often apt to believe that this is it, there is nothing else, and all we need to do is encompass such a message. And this is not quite so. There is no such thing as any lesson or any message that we can ever receive about which we can say, this is it, or that this encompasses all. And as a matter of fact, I will go as far as to say that if you read every book and booklet of the infinite way, you still must not say, this is it, and this encompasses all there is. The absolute truth is this. All of the truth of the entire spiritual kingdom is embodied in only two words. And one need not go any further than those two words for their entire life's salvation, if they encompass them. Now, the difficulty that we experience when we accept a lesson, deep and wonderful as it was, the lesson of last night, is that we are apt to remove it from its context, from the entire message, and then we would go wrong. In other words, never study last night's lesson separate and apart from Monday night or tonight. Because if you do, you are apt to miss the way. Let me explain this. When we have a lesson or receive an impartation on that blessed I, if we have received it in the depth of humility as Moses did, as Jesus did, we will probably make no mistakes, although it is said that in the end Moses made a mistake. Even with all the depth of his understanding and demonstration. The reason is that somewhere along the line an individual is apt to believe that a human being is God. That because we use the word I, that we may substitute once in a while the word Joel. It has been done, you know. Whole teachings have evolved in the world which would make it appear as if man were God, as if a human being could walk around saying, I am, or I am God, or I am Spirit. Now, in the ancient days, before there were printing presses, when there were only manuscripts, it was impossible for the people to have even a very slight knowledge of truth. truth always was locked up in monasteries, ashramas, brotherhoods, religious orders, schools of mystery, and those of these schools were scholars, were thinkers, and of course were educated to read and write. And they had access to all of the manuscripts that passed from generation to generation on the subject of truth. Every one of these orders has had the same experience, that somewhere along the line some of its members got the belief that they were learning about personal powers, powers they could take unto themselves and use. And so out of these came what is known today, and what was known even then, as the Black Brotherhoods. Now the Black Brotherhoods were always made up of these educated, cultured, refined scholars studying truth and wrongly interpreting it, and then attempting to use it for personal gain, personal fame, personal motives, and thereby lost their memberships in the White Brotherhood and formed others which later were called Black Brotherhoods. Now, it is in this same way that, and all of this came about, remember, because the truth about I was taught, and these poor souls interpreted I to be Joel, Jim, James, Robert, and then thought, aha, now with this secret we can do wonders. Oh, now I have power. Now I can do this and I can do that, and I can use this power. So it is that if we take a lesson like last night and we are not very careful, we also might misinterpret it and gather the idea that, well, now we can walk out of here and within a few years from now we ought to be at least governor of the state on the way to the White House. Or whatever it is that our particular ambition might direct us to. Therefore, be sure that all teachings, all messages that you read or study that have to do with I, please remember that you are not talking or thinking or reading about a human being, but the divinity which appears as individual being but never imparts its power to the individual, but expresses it as or through the individual. And that I will explain to you in this way. Even the master, after he was a master, had 3 temptations in the wilderness. You would think that after you get to be a master there are no more temptations, but let the experience of Jesus free you from any such belief. There are temptations all along the way. And what were these temptations that he faced? I call it I-ness. I-N-E-S-S. I-ness. The tempter said, if you are the Son of God, of course you have power. So jump off this cliff. Nothing will harm you. Had the master done that his ministry would have ended there and then, because the eye that would jump would be the eye that believed it had spiritual power, and it would soon learn that it had none. Had Jesus fallen from that mountain or been pushed, he would instantly have realized the presence of God, and it would have picked him up and carried him down, because there was no I-ness there. He was tempted to turn stones into bread. Don't you ever allow yourself to be tricked by anybody into making a demonstration to prove that what you know is true, because you will lose. The eye that tries to make a demonstration, the eye that tries to prove it has understanding, is a mortal, it is a myth, it is without power. But if you are ever pushed into a demonstration, be assured that merely by closing your eyes and waiting, the I that I am will pick you up and carry you through, because there is an absence of I-ness, which really means personal sense. God is not personal sense, and personal sense is not God. In orthodoxy, we are confronted with this problem when, for instance, some church or some nation believes that God is on our side. Well, now, if we remember the fate of the ships that went down, the Blitz of London and Coventry, you'd have to believe that God was on the German side, until you saw Berlin, Munich, Dresden, and Leipzig, and then you'd believe, well, God switched in the middle. If you saw the ruins of Pearl Harbor, I'm sure you'd be convinced that God was not on our side. Our ships lay wrecked, our men lay dead and wounded. And the other side went off scot-free. But there too, I guess, God changed sides. And along came Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It is a terrible thing to believe that God is on the side of humans in view of the catastrophes that are continually happening to humans. Whether those humans are momentarily in the right or wrong, good or bad, history does not show that God is on the side of humans, on the side of any humans. It is only when we rise above that sense of personal selfhood that we find God on our side. There was an experience in the last war at Dunkirk which I believe shows beyond all doubt that God was on the scene, but not on the scene of humans. He was on the scenes of those men who were in the air, absolutely selfless in the realization that they of themselves could do nothing, in the realization that as humans they were gone. As humans there was no hope, and in the absence of that I-ness, God took over. And a miracle took place, a whole series of miracles. And from all the evidence there, I don't even believe an atheist would doubt that God was on that scene. So it is. God is with us when we rise above personal sense and personal powers, because God constitutes our being, but God does not constitute the being of a mortal indulging good and evil. That was Paul's sense when he said, the creature that cannot please God and is not under the law of God, neither indeed can be. Then he said, but ye are the sons of God, if so be the Spirit of God dwell in you. As you rise above personal sense, as you rise above personal sense of power, to where you no longer say, I am good, or I am spiritual, or I have God power, and realize I can of my own self do nothing. If I speak of myself, I bear witness to a lie. And then be so completely absent from personal sense, then you will find that the I that I am, the Spirit of God in you, the Christ that dwelleth in you, will pick you up. You'll find that underneath are the everlasting arms. You will find that every step of your way is God-governed, God-guided. But be assured of this, self must be out of the way. There must be no sense that I can do this or I can do that, but rather the definite inner conviction, not an affirmation, not a cliche, an absolute inner conviction that only by the grace of God am I immortal, eternal, infinite, and all the rest. So it is. Watch carefully that you do not lose your, well, we'll just use the word humility. And I do not use that word in the ordinary human sense of humility, but the pure, true humility, which is an absence of any belief that any individual anywhere on the globe has personal powers. Only in that being absent from the body, absent from personal selfhood, can the Spirit of God take over and perform its functions. He performeth that which is given me to do, if so be I can become a vacuum. If so be I can lose myself and open myself to this transcendental presence and power. But if I am in the way, then I cannot come in. Again, I remind you of the story of the one who went to heaven. As long as there is two, God does not function. As long as there is me and God, or as long as I believe that I have in some way acquired God powers, God cannot function. It is only when I know beyond all doubt that I of my own self am nothing, only then is it possible for God power to operate. And then no one can say afterward that I did it, or my understanding, or my wisdom, or my spirituality. Then, do not forget this. Do not go to the other extreme and separate God from yourself, from your individual identity, for Christ and Jesus is one. And Christ and I are one. Christ and he, or Christ and she, Christ and you. And that is explained in this way. As a human being, this is the unillumined mind, the darkened mind of sense. There is no Christ there, no Spirit of God. But as an individual turns their thought, regardless of why, they may be driven to God through danger, they may be driven through sin, disease, lack. It makes no difference why. What counts is the fact that for some reason we decide to turn to God and begin to abide in God. That is, we either read the Bible or our religious literature, or we practice some mode of keeping the mind stayed on God, or we practice some mode of acknowledging God in all our ways, or abiding in the Word and letting the Word abide in us, and the daily, hourly practice of this wears away that opaque sense of being and makes of our thought or mind or consciousness a transparency. And then, with this false sense of self removed, even in a degree, the true light, Christ, begins to be manifest. And eventually, as in the case of Jesus and some others, human sense almost completely disappears. Never completely while in the flesh, but almost completely. And they are then clear, true, pure transparencies for God. And then we can say, Jesus the Christ, or Jesus the Christed one, or Jesus the Anointed one, or Jesus the Illumined, or Jesus the Messiah, because the two have now become one. Well, in some measure, everyone who reaches consistently and consciously toward the atmosphere of God has, right from the start, some tiny Christ light which becomes that much of their consciousness. As they continue in it, they eventually come to a place where they find that they may heal themselves or another. And by that time, they have attained more of that Christ consciousness merely by eliminating some of the sense of I-ness. And so as they continue, more and more Christ mind becomes their individual mind, and so on, until it is possible that we may again have someone, or more than one, attain that mind which was also in Christ Jesus. I mean, the fullness of that mind which was also in Christ Jesus. Everyone who heals has some measure of it. Everyone who is beginning to lose their hate, love, and fear of error has some measure of it. Everyone who is beginning to understand the non-power of either matter or mind has some measure of it. And the degree of the Christ mind that we have and can demonstrate is in proportion to the removal of that I-ness. Now, remember, the I that I'm talking about that has to be removed is the I that fears, the I that doubts, the I that judges, criticizes, condemns, hates, the I that cannot surrender its personal self. That is the barrier to our demonstration of that mind which was also in Christ Jesus. When the Master said to the woman taken in adultery, "Neither do I condemn thee," he added, "But go and sin no more." Do not return to that same state of consciousness, or else it will externalize itself in the same way. So it is. There are two sides to the lesson of I. There is understanding it from the standpoint of that blessed I which I am, and then being very careful not to let that develop a sense of I-ness which believes that I have spiritual power or God has given me his power. God never surrenders God's power and we can never be other than a transparency for it. It is especially true in the spiritual field that we are apt to develop I-ness if we're not careful. That is why the temptation came to the master even when he was a master. There may be some, I hope not, but there may be some who may believe that there is an individual on earth who could draw together a class like this. Don't ever let yourselves believe that. Nobody has ever been empowered to draw together such a gathering, such a group of people as you are. That has to be done by the Spirit of God in you, causing you to move. And don't ever believe that anyone else can do it but the divine impulse that is within you. Yes, I'm sure that if we want to go out and advertise and promise health, wealth, and happiness and 6 easy lessons, that we could get a lot of people here, but they wouldn't be you. They would be gullible people. They would be those who still believe you can get something for nothing or get it the easy way. You are drawn because you are seeking the light, and you are drawn to that place which is not offering an easy way of life, holding out no inducements, merely from what you have read yourself has led you to see that here at least is a promise of spiritual realization, for the demonstration of God, and that not the easy way, for the books reveal that. So it is, whether your work takes you into spiritual fields or whether it takes you into commerce, art, literature, science, try to realize this. There are human ways of getting on top. They are not your ways. You can get to the top only in the surrender of personal powers, only in the degree of becoming a transparency through which divine ideas can flow, spiritual ideas, ideas which universally bless. Then you will find that everything is drawn to you in harmony, in peace, in order. And now you may ask the question, how is it, why is it, that there is a human world, a human selfhood, which is not under the law of God, neither indeed can be? For the answer to this, you go back to the book of Genesis. You learn in the first chapter of Genesis that God created this universe in His own image and likeness, and that it partook of the nature of God, spiritual, perfect, immortal, eternal. When you come to the second chapter of Genesis, you find a different story. And as it was revealed to me, this second chapter of Genesis is the history of the human mind and its creations. The human mind creating in its own image and likeness and creating dream pictures. And that is why, as it was discovered back there in the days of the white and black brotherhoods, that is why you can manipulate with the mind and change the pictures. That is why you can manipulate with the mind and change the outer scene. It is because this that we call a human universe, a physical universe, is really not a physical universe at all, it's mental. It is a universe of mind appearing as form, and we call that form matter. It makes no difference whether you call it matter or not. It is mind formed, mind manifested, mind expressed, and it is governed by mind through thought, and therefore, if one's interest is solely the operation of manipulating the human scene, then of course the mind, to some extent, can be used as a power to manipulate, to change, to correct, to improve, and to destroy, because the human mind embodies the powers of both good and evil. You need no proof of that. You have only to examine your own thoughts through the years and count up some of the bad ones that got in there, some of the desires that weren't good, some of the fears that certainly weren't good, and even some of the appetites and desires that were far from good. And then you know that the human mind has the power to be good and to be evil. It can be philanthropic and it can be miserly. It can give and it can withhold. It can be virtuous and it can be devilish. And in the manipulation of the mind, this is also true. Many of you, of course, are familiar with that passage in Mrs. Eddy's writings in which she says, "The day is coming when the thief will not have to enter your house to steal. You will bring your possessions to his door," or words to that effect. You almost saw that day with subliminal perception when you carried your pocketbooks right downstairs where you were told to and left it with the Coca-Cola and popcorn man. Not that you wanted Coca-Cola or popcorn, but that man wanted your money. And he told you so and you brought it to him. And of course I don't have to tell you about the investigations now on foot of fraudulent advertising. And here's another example of where you bring your cash to the thief. Now, if this were the whole story, the world would be in a very sad plight, but it isn't. Those who discovered this principle of the operation of the human mind in centuries gone by did grow into great power, did have their way for a while, and then collapsed and the bottom fell out and virtue triumphed. But later centuries came along and some other people learned of these principles, and again the eternal battle between good and evil went on, and for quite a while evil was on top, and then eventually overthrown, and we start a new deal. And that has been going on all down through the centuries, and the reason is that the manipulation of the mind by the mind always reacts upon the one that uses it. This is a law of action and reaction, a law of cause and effect. As ye sow, so shall ye reap. And if you sow to the flesh, you will reap corruption. And if anybody believes that that is in the Bible as a joke, We're going to learn about the sense of humor, because nothing of a funny nature and nothing of a fictional nature about those statements. As ye sow, so shall ye reap. Now, as long then as we are in the realm of the manipulation of the mind by the mind, whether it's done individually or collectively, the end of that man who uses it is worse than the beginning, and he would be far better off to have a millstone strung around his neck and dumped into the lake. But he doesn't know it until too late. Now, throughout the ages, wherever this power of mind has been known and used for either personal, selfish, or evil purposes, while some have suffered under it, in the end it was those who threw the stone that were hit with it. Those who sowed to the power of the mind reaped the corruption that is inevitable. Now, however, we are entering a different age, and that is why you should not be surprised when you read in the December letter that peace was established on earth some months ago. And you will read of it. A new day has dawned, a new age has dawned, in which the discovery has been given to us, the revelation has been given to us, of how to stop the action of mind manipulation. How it can be stopped individually and collectively. How it can be stopped not only to stop such activities of subliminal perception, but even to stop storms, stop hurricanes, stop tornadoes, and stop them dead before they do their damage. This comes under the heading of an understanding of the origin of evil. We know the origin of evil. We've had it proven, and we've had the remedy proven, so that part of the healing work that is accomplished in this work is accomplished by that very understanding that mind, the mind of man, and its thoughts is no more power than matter. And this ends mental causes, just as it ends physical diseases. You can't end the physical disease without ending the mental cause, and the mental cause we know. Now, the mental cause isn't resentment, anger, jealousy, malice. It is that which produced envy, jealousy, malice, lust, hate, greed in the human mind. Handling such things as hate, envy, jealousy, malice, lust, this is like handling little leaves on a tree instead of cutting the tree down right at the roots. And so we don't handle or work against any of these trifles of human thought or effects of the human mind, but we go right to the root and nullify the action and power of that which has been called creative mind. Not the creative consciousness which is God, but that false sense of it, which is the mind of the individual functioning not at the level of conscious deviltry. Heavens, no. Never give a treatment to a person, and never believe that a person is evil. and never treat a person. Heavens no. The mind we're talking about is the universal mesmeric mind which operates as the mind of human beings. Therefore, we leave the mind of human beings alone. We don't tamper with it. We don't try to improve it or kill it or destroy it. We ignore it and go to the root and then watch. The effects are exactly that as when you impersonalize in your healing work. Remember, if you for a minute accept a man or woman or child as being evil, as having evil propensities, as being nasty, as being immoral, as being dishonest, all you're doing is malpracticing yourself. All you're doing is working with a fleshly mind, judging, condemning. This is no part of infinite way activity. The entire basis of our work is impersonalizing and nothingizing. And when you realize then that the mind that hates, the mind that is envious, the mind that is jealous, isn't the mind of an individual, it is the universal, false sense of mind, mesmeric mind, call it what you will, Adamic mind, and then nothingize it and realize its impotency in the face of God's presence, then you will understand how you prevent its operation in human experience, and you elevate not only those who would have been the victims of these things, but those who themselves would innocently or ignorantly have been avenues through which this carnal or mortal mind would operate. That is why I say, do not believe that knowing your true identity is the full story. It isn't. Because even knowing your full identity, you are left with the appearances. You are left with what the Master called this world, that which he said he had overcome. We will overcome this world, individually and collectively, as we learn never to point a finger at man, woman, or child, or group of men, women, or children, and realize that all evil is impersonal. All evil is impotent. It is the arm of flesh or nothingness. Being impersonal, it has no person in which, on which, through which to operate or against which to operate. Watch the miracle of healings that take place in your experience when you can forget the image of the patient or the tyrant and withdraw from judgment, criticism, condemnation, and realize, aha, this is the devil, the tempter. This is that carnal mind which is not enmity against God, but which is an arm of flesh. When you are faced with what we call destructive weather, cyclones, tidal waves, all the rest of these unnatural forces of weather, please remember that actually there's no such thing as good weather or bad weather. All weather is absolutely perfect. But all weather would be as still as it is in this room if something didn't set it in motion, and that something is the universal carnal mind, the belief in two powers, and as you impersonalize it and nothingize it, it stops, and it stops dead. I only tell you this because we've experimented. And in our experiments we have 100% results. Not 90 and not 85 and not 95. In every case, it has stopped dead in its tracks before it landed. And it is ye who must know the truth, and the truth will make you free. It is you who know the truth who must consciously know the truth. This too is carnal mind, not enmity against God, but the arm of flesh, or no power. And then watch it dissolve. Watch it as it calms down and moves on. It is no mystery anymore, the origin of evil, or its remedy. It still remains for us to demonstrate the entire harmony of being by our working with these principles until we have come to that place where, in the absence of a personal sense of I, the principle itself can work. That is why it sounds so strange when you witness any degree of puffed upness in some students when they falsely believe that they have achieved something great, like the disciples when they believed that they had power over evil. There's your humor in the Bible. You can just see it. They had power over evil. The Master gave them their rebuke. I'll never make such a statement, you have power over evil. The secret is that evil hasn't any power over you. That's the secret. What did hinder you? Pick up your bed and walk. Open your eyes. Lazarus, come forth. That doesn't mean you have power over evil. That means evil has no power over you. And in proportion as you lose that puffed upness, personal pride, belief that you found a great God on your side, give that up and realize the truth. You've merely been given a principle of life, the principle of life, that thou couldst have no power over me unless it came from the Father. Thou couldst have no power over me unless it came from the Father. Then remember this: you don't need any power to heal. You need the recognition, the realization of the great truth that that which is appearing as the carnal mind is only the arm of flesh, nothingness. And then you can do your healing works. And that is why I say to students, please don't go out of here and tell this to anyone. All you do is lose it for yourself. Keep it locked up within you until by your fruitage it has been made evident. Don't even try to teach it to anyone. Don't get the false idea that we are enamored of numbers, that we are eager to have a big following. Don't get such ideas, because it's far from truth. Give me a half a dozen students able and willing to realize that there is a principle of life, and that this principle of life is the power, and I will have had more joy out of my work than having you write me that you have 200 students or 500, for that really makes no impression upon me. I have never gone out after numbers. I have never advertised. I have never sent for anyone, and never will. It isn't numbers. It is students drawn of the Spirit who can realize within themselves that God created this universe, and God maintains it and sustains it without any human help. Our function is to know the truth. When we know the truth of the nature of evil and how to handle it, we will find then that all that we have learned is, thou canst have no power over me unless it came from the Father. In other words, that whatever it is that appears as a formation or activity of the carnal mind or mortal mind is the arm of flesh. And don't fear it, but rather rest in that word. And as you come face to face with evildoers, as you must in this work, please don't personalize it. Don't get mad at them. They can't help it. They're the victims of it as much as you would be if you permitted yourself to get mad. Just turn within and realize, aha, I see a devil standing over there. But all you're doing is tempting, and when we say, get thee behind me, you have to fade. Your part in the play is over. It's a quick one, too, if we make it so. If we dawdle, play around with that devil, lead him on a bit, he'll get us. We have to be quick and sharp and powerful in saying no. We have to be quick and sharp and powerful in realizing the principle of the infinite way, and the principle is no power. No power. None. I don't even need a God power over evil. No, no, no. You don't have power over evil. Evil has no power over you. Be glad that your name is written in heaven, that you're one of the eternal and immortal angels flying around without wings, except the wings on your heels that you get from traveling in airplanes. No, ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free, and that has no right to puff you up. That has no right to give you any sense of personal power. It should give you the sense of smiling at the non-power of that which the world has been hating, fearing, and in some cases even loving. You remember, some of you, in some of our classes when we have touched on supply, and we have used the illustration, and one which I still like to use often, because to me it seems so true, that of money. This time it's a coin, but it could just as well be a bill. Here it is on the table, and you look at it, or in your mind's eye picture a dollar bill. See how dead it is. There it lies, and it can't do anything. It can't go to you, and it can't come to me. It can't buy a newspaper. You wouldn't believe that a dollar bill can't buy a newspaper, but it can't. I can, but the dollar bill can't. It's dead, absolutely dead. And once you become, or let money become dead to you, you have conquered it. Its only hold over you is the belief that it has life, that it has power, that it can do something, that it can be something. Well, in some cases it can. I read last week of a hotel in England that accepted $500 in Confederate currency for a night's lodging. They evidently believed it could do something. No, it can't. Money is dead, and the moment you realize it, in that moment it has lost its power over you. And when it has lost its power over you, it is exactly the same as when you can look at the season of colds, grip, and flu, and say to all these infectious and contagious germs, thou couldst have no power over me. You may be a germ, but you're dead, unless I give you the life to believe in you. Can we prove it? Why, haven't we been proving it for 90 years? That germs, infection, and contagion isn't power? Haven't we been healing it metaphysically for all the years of the metaphysical world? How could we if it was a power? It would laugh at us. But it isn't power. And none of these germs that are in the world have any more power than the universal carnal mind gives it. individualized by your belief. But one with God is a majority. And therefore, one practitioner who knows this truth heals hundreds of peoples of colds, grip, and flu. And then if they stay with that practitioner, they'll prove to them that it won't come back next year or the year after or the year after that. Once you have demonstrated that germs are dead to you, you don't deny their existence, because that would be foolish. They have existence. You can see them under the microscope. There are germs, lots of them. But they can have no power over you unless that power were given them of God, for God is the law unto all being, and that law is spiritual law. So it is. Germs must become dead to you. Money must become dead to you. Then you are the master, and then you find that there's no lack, there's no limitation, because you're not giving power to that which is dead. You're giving the power to that which is the power, I. I am the bread and the meat and the wine and the water, not dollar bills. I am the bread and the meat and the wine and the water. I am life eternal. In the same way, the organs and functions of the body, they have to become dead to you too. If you believe that your heart gives you life, of course you must believe that your heart can deprive you of life. When you understand that it is your life which supports your heart, now you're at the right end. It is your life, the life which I am, which governs the heart and all the organs and functions of the body. But instead of looking down at the body and fearing it, let the body become dead to you and understand it as being dead. There it is, and it can't move unless I move it. And become aware of that this body can't feel, it can't have sensation, pleasurable or not, unless I am there to determine its nature. And when this body becomes that dead to you, you become alive with a body subject unto the I which I am, the life which is eternal. And there we are again. Isn't that terrible? All right, let us have our period of rest.